All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Morbid Planet. I'm your host, Erin Chapman. Tonight, our guest is a vampire and horror writer slash scholar slash editing machine, as I like to call him. His website boasts he's written accomplishments such as 3 monographs, 3 reviews, 8 edited volumes, 11 articles, and 44 book chapters in various publications. So please give a warm welcome tonight. We have Simon Bacon. So welcome.
Hello.
Thank you. I'm so glad we could connect because, we've got time zones going on here. And thanks for coming on the show because I know we've been acquainted on Facebook for quite a while. I don't even know how long, actually. I was trying to think about it. Was it a couple years?
It must be. I really lose time. I think with recent things to do with the pandemic, time is so strange. Things that seem to have happened so long ago, only sort of months back, and it's just very strange.
I know it's kind of all a blur, and that's why I was trying to think. And the one thing, though, since I've known you and I follow you on Facebook, is I have to say I am so impressed by the amount of projects. You always have something going on. You're always posting, looking for abstracts and different things like that. So that's one of the things I wanted to go in and chat about. So the first thing I was looking at was I was trying to dig up some information and, research you a little bit. And I found a write-up on Amazon that you had. And what really intrigued me was it discussed how your career moved into fabric creations, being helicoptered to remote castles in Scotland to tent 4 poster beds and making quilts for royalty. I was just like, what? And it just sounds like you've had such a unique career path. I was wondering, can you explain how you kind of ended up doing what you're doing now from that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those strange ones. It was kind of one of those things that I many years ago, I guess it would be that that originally I actually went to when I left school. I went to art college, and so I kind of did that. And so I did a BA in fine arts, and of course, BA in fine arts pretty much trains you for absolutely nothing. But so, and I kind of left that, and I actually started to make soft furnishings.
Okay.
It was one of those odd stories. I'd actually taken a year out during college. I just wanted to do something with my hands. So I thought, okay, and soft furnishings. I'd always done sewing and things like that. So I kind of did that. And when I left college, I went and did that, and I got on really well with the folks there. And the guy that ran it, Tim. I mean, we are friends now. Sort of was about 40 years later or something. I don't know. And we just really sparked off ideas with each other around furniture, as strange as these things are. And we ended up going to we started to design our own furniture, and it was very kind of gothic-y, lots of fabric, and we'd have spears and all these kinds of things. It was great fun. And so we then decided to exhibit it in the Milan Furniture Fair. I went to Cologne, so we was traveling around Europe.
Wow.
Through Harrods, and so with that we used to go a lot to sort of like celebrities and things and sell them stuff. So as part of that, we used to do lots of as a kind of side thing for sort of cash. We used to put fabric on walls and do tented beds and stuff, and we was actually fairly good at that. So this was the one where as like happens in that world, there was a bed tenting emergency in a castle on a loch in Scotland. So
what does an emergency entail? Is it like they broke their bed?
I don't know. Well, mate, no, it's, as always with these things, what it is that the very wealthy person that owns it is about to hold a large party to show off their nice new place.
Okay.
So this means then they need to get it done now because their party's got to go on now. And so I was basically flown up to this lock.
Wow.
And there were a few others there doing other bits of furnishings as well. And we were there till about 1 o'clock in the morning, getting it ready for the party that was going to start the following day.
Wow. They were cutting it close.
I know. So we had quite a few of them. I remember we actually did some furniture for, it was the people that ran the production company for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And again, they were having a big party with Chris Tarrant and all them coming along. And we worked for 2.5 days solid, no sleep involved at all in this, to make about 20 chairs to go around their table on Christmas Eve. So we kind of, I can remember we were both so tired, and we had to drive these chairs out to their house, and we kind of staggered out of there at, I think it was about 3 o'clock on Christmas Eve, and we both almost passed out. I mean, it was just.
I hope they paid you well. Right. I really do.
It was okay. It's never as much as sort of you would want.
Yeah.
But so it reached a point, I think it's about 15 years of doing this and what have you. And so decided to stop that. It was one of those things where, because the furniture was more fabric based, and people that collect furniture like to buy less, like to buy more permanent things. So you tend to have like metal furniture, very fancy metal furniture, or wood carving stuff, because fabric wears out. So we ended up giving that up, and then I went off to make quilts for the Queen. So which again sounds good, but basically it was this. It was a quilt maker that was based in North London. Okay. So I ran their workshop for them, and one of the clients was the Queen. So I made quilts for the Queen. I made cushions for Roman Abramovich's big new yacht. And again, with that, as you would imagine, if you can have bed tenting emergencies, there are quilting emergencies as well. And I was driven over to a dockyard in Holland from North London. It's an emergency. I was driven all the way over there to sort out the quilts, someone's yacht. So yes.
The emergencies that the rich have, I guess.
I fairly much. They seem very important for them. But anyway, I mean, as whilst I was actually doing the quilting job, I had actually gone back to university as well. Okay. I did a part-time MA. And that kind of got my sort of brain going again.
Quilting though is interesting, because my granny did quilting her whole life. Yeah, and I used to watch her do it, and she's always like, it's all math and it's doing this and that and planning, and I have so many that she made, and they're just all from scratch, all hand sewn, and they're so beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It is quite amazing. Because a lot of what we used to do for that is also where you get like huge pieces of fabric, and then you machine sew these kind of like chain link designs on them. So you then have those bits that kind of pop out. And some always that is amazing with doing that is because it's chain link that they use to outline quilt, these designs, if you actually unpick one end, you could, in theory, unpick the whole thing just by pulling the one thread, which made that kind of quilting exciting, but also very scary if something snags.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of went back to university. It was actually a course on cultural memory.
Oh, okay.
And it was through that that I actually realised that I have a bit of a thing for vampires. I hadn't realised them before. And it was only because I wrote about how American, like the American memory of itself, it was very much structured around vampire films. You can kind of follow a link up that like the really big vampire films are very much part of how America constructed who it was and who it specifically wasn't. Like it specifically wasn't Bela Lugosi. It wasn't this dangerous foreigner from Europe that was trying to threaten the nice American home. If you can count England as being New England and all that kind of thing. So, but yeah, so then I realised that, wow, I actually do like vampire films. I didn't know this. I hadn't realised all these stacks of vampire films I had meant I was a bit of a freak for that sort of thing. So yeah, so I then ended up, again, one of those odd things that I started to go to events like conferences, to as you do, to talk about the things you're writing about and what have you. And I went to an Evil Women conference in Prague, where I met my now wife. So so I found my own.
That's such a cool story.
Evil woman, and so within about 6 or 7 months, it was, I actually gave everything up in Britain and moved to Poland. Yeah. And we've been living here together, and now with children, for the past 12 years. Wow. So, and so that then really focused me down on the more academic side of things. And so, and more recently, writing books.
And are you one of these people where you have like a day job, or do you just write most of the time?
It kind of is. Well, we had a thing where I was working for a company that used to organize academic events. Okay. So that was quite. So with that, I mean, I was in charge of that, and I was organising like, it was something like 100 academic conferences a year. So I'd be helping to put them all together, get people to lead them, and I would lead some myself, particularly anything relating to monsters, vampires, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I did that for about 3 or 4 years. Which was good fun, and it was really a good way to meet lots of people in sort of the field that were coming up and writing about things. So that was all really good. And then we had our first child, and I left that company. And we kind of had it for a while. Whilst my wife works, she works at the local university. That's kind of like the main job. So while she was doing that, I would stay home to look after our sort of firstborn. Yeah. Then after the firstborn, it was then the sort of nextborn, and then it's kind of stayed on with that. Okay. So during the day, it's very much sorting out the kids and the house. I'm kind of like a full-time house husband. Yeah. So I can't do that, and then the writing kind of fits in around that. So most of it actually happens once the kids have gone to bed.
When I did the intro and I kind of gave a summary of what you've done, was that accurate, or is there other stuff? I figure I probably missed some things.
There's a few other books and things, you know.
Okay.
There's just stuff, but it is mainly writing. I haven't really done events so much recently, not least of which because it's all been very much online.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, in a strange sort of way, the pandemic and that kind of migration from in person to online things has actually really kind of I wouldn't say moved my writing along, but it's actually meant that then people, I think, are much more into that online community of talking and discussing and doing more things.
I think it's almost kind of like made it more normal, as opposed to before it was like so random. You'd have online events and things, but now it's more like this is all we're having is online events.
This is true. I mean, it's really strange because when I was when I was still putting events together, it was still very much in person. It was very much about that, you know, people standing around talking about ideas and then they would make collaborations because they had met. They'd actually met and talked. And we had talked about maybe doing online things because of time zones and how expensive it is to fly to different places. And it was always so difficult because people didn't want to be getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning somewhere. and you know, it just wasn't right. You couldn't really chat in the same way you could when you were at an actual event. And yet suddenly it's like, Bush, this is it. And now we're coming back to possibly in person again, and people really aren't that sure so much, you know.
They're kind of almost used to it now, where it's like,
I think this is it.
Yeah.
But I mean, but what I have found, it seems to because I do quite a bit now on Facebook and Twitter as well. And there's that you can't, and you do need to be very careful with, I think, with all these kind of social media things. You need to be very careful about who you have as your group, and get out any people that are not good vibrations, I think, in these things. But I know there's some groups that I take part in quite a bit, and they're just a really good, supportive set of people that are more than happy to share their ideas, and everybody helps each other. And it's kind of like, for all the bad stuff they say about Facebook, and there are lots of things about Facebook and social media that is very bad. But there are bits that are actually very good, and I think there's bits where people were very supportive and always willing to help, and you know, when other people are down, other can help, and you can't find things, and they do.
And it's just like it makes this weird support network that you wouldn't have had before. And I know I've met so many people like yourself who I wouldn't have found otherwise. So you know, you find different people, and that's the cool part I like, is, you know, it enables you to be friends with everyone around the world, and for what you like, you know, likenesses and everything like that. I have to ask, with your whole process for writing, because I feel like you're always writing something different, or you're looking for different abstracts and things like that. How does it work? Like, are you recruiting other people to write them, and then is it for like a compilation like you're making, or is it for like another book and you're just kind of helping people out? And then how does it work? Do they get paid for their abstract going in a book? Or I just know nothing about it, so that's why.
Most of it is all centered around the very bizarre setup, which is academic publishing.
Okay.
And this is it's a strange beast. It's a very strange beast. It's kind of, I mean, whereas you hear of like even normal like fiction publishing is very strange as well. In its sort of own ways. But I think with fiction, there's always that more direct correlation between the work that you've kind of put into it and the fact that you would then be paid for it in some sort of way. But also with fiction publishing, there's a bit where you have a much wider audience for your work, and so the kind of monies involved for, or potential monies involved for publishers and the authors involved is very different to within academic publishing, which the whole thing of actually selling books is always a kind of odd thing within that. It kind of is caught between the two poles of the idea of furthering the cause of knowledge for its own sake, which is kind of very much one of these within academia. So you want to stretch ideas, you want to come up with new things, different ways you can see things and view things, and that is important within itself. So it doesn't matter whether it's easy to read, it's just that, this is groundbreaking research. Which then in itself also feeds into the idea that universities that will be, in an ideal world, they would be employing all these academics to do this. Of course, this doesn't happen, and there's a lot of and increasingly more academics that could actually do with some sort of money and stuff for this, because it is a kind of like lot of work. The trouble is that academic publishers themselves are still set up on this old sort of model.
Okay.
In that they publish books that they don't expect to sell, almost, or what a lot of them do, they only expect to sell to libraries. So the idea is, hence why you get books that are like £100, $150, and all this. I mean, ridiculous. So you and us normally wouldn't go down the shop and just buy a book for this, because these are ridiculously expensive books. So they kind of set up this system in that it's for your research, it's better for you to be published and then quoted by other academics, so to show that your work is being out there.
Okay.
So that kind of put down as being a goal, which then universities like, because they like that oh yeah, you're published, your work is well known, that means this reflects well on them. And so there's this kind of like point system. So the actual goal, if you're within in the university, one, you can actually publish books yourself. So you write monographs. Although rather bizarrely within the system, you can sometimes get more points for writing a journal article than you can write a book. It all depends who you then publish the book with, because some publishers are rated better than other ones, and it's such a bizarre system. So the main thing of it is, what it comes down to is that when you have collections of essays, the people that contribute to those, you're probably doing well to get a free copy of the book that you're in.
Okay.
And this is it. And even now, I mean, I have it because I do edit quite a lot of things, and I actually have quite a few standoffs with publishers that I work with, because they actually don't want to send out physical copies. They want to just send out ebooks of these things, and it's like, for
it's cheaper.
Exactly, and okay, I must admit, I would confess that I know for myself from posting out books during the past couple of years, the fact that they'll arrive is like amazing. But it's like, well, you think people done all this work, they should at least get a book, you know.
I know, that's the like least they can owe you is the actual book. And
I know. It's so yeah, it's a bizarre thing. So most of the edited collections that I do, they are for academic publishers.
Okay.
So with that, it is that I'm just getting people together that write about an idea. I mean, and often, sometimes within academic publishing, they're not writing about things that most people would actually want to sort of read about.
You post some weird ones sometimes. I see like abstract on blah blah, and I'm like, oh, but it's interesting, but it's just some weird topics sometimes.
I mean, there are those things that are really fascinating. I mean, horror films, vampire films, they're really fascinating because they do some very strange things. I mean, the recent one that I'm working on at the moment is weird cat lady gothic.
I saw that.
I mean, it sounds like a really spurious idea, and you think, oh, what's that stuff? But it's actually very interesting. It's just that within films, I mean, not just horror films, but any kind of sort of gothic-y sort of film or whatever, you often have this figure of this Catwoman. Is quite often a woman rather than a man, so that in itself says something, right? And they quite often know something as well. They're always one of those figures that, you know, they all stay away from, and then suddenly they impart this crucial bit of sort of crucial bit of knowledge, so the hero, heroine, or whatever can then find out something, or in fact, there's some dark secret that is even worse.
Well, because they're around the neighborhood. They've been there for years. They're old. And some people are like, they're crazy. They don't pay attention, but little do they know.
That's right. They've been watching. And I also think there's some very interesting ideas within that because they're like the kind of weird cat lady, they're actually much closer to sort of nature in a strange way. They are removed from human society, like male society, as it were, is led by the Moors of patriarchy and things, and so they're more closely connected to nature, and so they don't bother with the kind of the showy things of, you know, all the crazy adverts on TV, so they go and buy stuff. They don't have TVs, and so there's a kind of, in a rather bizarre way, a kind of eco message involved with that as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can see their roles within films and how they react to the world around them.
And that's so cool that you just got all this from, you know, the crazy cat ladies.
I mean, this is it, and it's what I find is great with that is that I'm not the only weird one that was sort of thinking about that. So I know I have was it like Sarah Williams, who's part of the book as well. She would fully admit that she's a crazy cat lady, and so we feel much better because we're finding all these other crazy cat people out there that are thinking,
I'm a crazy turtle lady, so I shouldn't talk. So
well, I mean, this is the kind of thing in that you're much more closely in tune with the kind of like natural world rather than the busy, crazy world around us. So I think there's lots of really curious stuff going on within films that aren't always the main bits. I mean, everybody's written about the main bits, the Supermans, the Batmans, and all this kind of thing. So I think picking up those small bits that actually then shine a light on other bigger areas to show, well, actually, you know, this is there too. So most of the books I do are within that kind of area. So I'm mainly finding people for collections that I'm putting together myself, or I've got somebody else involved that we've kind of spoken and thought, well, yeah, that would be a good idea. And also, I think the books like that are very organic as well. In that, I think quite often, or I have seen the collection where people have got a very firm idea of what the book is, and sort of like publishers they like to know what they will get. So they want it all laid out, all tied down from the very start, and this is what they're going to get. Because I think my books are much more fluid than that. So it's like, let's throw an idea out there. Let's see what we get back from that. And then you can kind of see how they all work. And okay, so this is the idea, and that kind of works together. Then you make that work as a sort of combined idea.
Or you might get, I'm sure, ideas for even then another one sometimes, depending. Yeah, depending what people give you.
This is it. And I've had ones where I've put out a call for one book, and I've had so many responses back that I've ended up doing two books, because you can say, well, this half of them is the first idea, but there's all these on this other idea, and this is great. So you know,
that's cool.
Yeah.
And if out of all these like compilations, or like, I know you're also working on a couple of your own books this year, which I'll get to in a minute, but what has been like your favorite one, if you had to pick? Was one like meaningful to you, or like a labor of love, if you will? Do you have a favorite?
Well, honestly, I am very much one of those people that my favorite book is the next book.
Okay.
I mean, they're all great. And I mean, the one it's probably that I'm most excited about still at the moment. Actually, there's probably two that I'm very excited about at the moment, because they kind of haven't finished yet. So I'm working on them, and there's some great things in them, and I really want to see how it ends up, because it's still there's one of them I'm still a good half left to do.
Yeah.
And the other one is it's a big handbook, and there's things still coming in. So I've not even seen any of the things yet. And there's some terrific authors writing for it. And I kind of haven't seen any of that either. And it's kind of like, it's really exciting. I want to see what it finishes up as. But I know with all of them, it's always the next, because it's that next idea. You think, oh, that's a great idea.
That's cool, because you just get so excited. You're just like,
the
next one. And when we like talk about like monsters and vampires, because you mentioned earlier how, you know, when you started to realize about the whole connection with the films and everything, when you were younger or throughout your whole life, have you been like a monster fan or vampire fan?
Strange. No, not at all. It's really strange. Yeah, I feel very strange in this, because I know like other people that when they were like 7 or 8, they had the figures and this. Not at all. I wanted to play football. I used to love football, and I was really bad, but I used to love football. And also because I was going to art college, so I was really focused on drawing, painting, and I mean, not necessarily monsters. So I used to do a lot of the kind of surreal kind of stuff for a while.
Yeah.
But then it got very much more about the ideas behind it. I got very much more conceptual in the kind of things that I was working on. But it really, it's just, I was always doing whatever I was doing at that point, like chair making. So I was always thinking about designs for chairs. And it really wasn't until I went back to do a master's, the master's course I spoke about, which was 15 years ago now, maybe 15, 16, maybe. But that kind of just, and that was like the light switch that I actually realised I did, strange enough, own quite a lot of vampire films.
Yeah. And do you like do you read as well? Like, are you a fiction reader?
I have that was
Mhm.
actually something I used to do a lot. I used to
Okay.
read a lot. So I used to. I can remember when I left school. When I first left school, I hated reading. Doing O level English at school ruined reading for me for ages. He's like forced to read Shakespeare and everything. I loathed it.
I think
And it's
most people
actually,
do,
I
unfortunately.
know. But then it's like once I left school, then I actually got into, probably very badly, got into like as Sarch and sort of Camus. I used to have this great old secondhand bookshop where I grew up. And so you could buy all these books in translation, but they were old and cheap. And because I was involved in art, there's always lots of books that were talking about art theories through like the German writers, Thomas Mann and Hermann Hesse. And so I used to buy them all in sort of in translation, but very cheap. So I used to just consume books. And then I had a huge stint on the detective novels. So for years, I went through from sort of Sam Spade, Marlowe, Wilkie Collins.
I like all those old movies. I watched like Humphrey Bogart and
movies.
yeah.
If anybody had said any films that I would have written about when I was younger, it would be like Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly. Still love them. Absolutely love them.
I love black and white films, and
yeah,
it's funny, if I ever had to like list, say, like my top 10 movies, most people have never heard of it or seen it, is I love His Girl Friday with with Grant. And that's just, I was actually watching it again the other night.
I mean, they're so sharp.
Yeah.
And it's just brilliant.
Yeah, there's a lot of the old ones, and I've just watched them for years, even as a kid, and I like them. But
Now, I can remember, oddly enough, with all that I can remember that my dad used to watch the Hammer horror films when they were on TV.
Okay.
I remember I must have only been about eight, 9, or maybe even early teens, and they were always seemed to me as something a bit vaguely scary, but also vaguely sexy when I was a kid. I mean, when you look at them now, they're certainly not as much as I thought.
It's funny you mentioned Hammer films, because I just did a recording today with someone about a Hammer film that I'd never seen. So it was very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, now when I look at them, they're amazing films. They really are. When you look at them in sort of compared to the films that were going on at the same time around them, and that they really did just change the game. But I mean, particularly for sort of like vampire stuff. And even now, it's like they just influence so many films. It is amazing.
That leads me then to your book that you're working on, which I wanted to talk about, which I think sounds so freaking cool, is your 1,000 Vampires on Screen that you're working on. And I was wondering if you could kind of tell us about that, and how far along are you? Because 1,000 vampires, that's a lot.
Well, you think so? It's been a really strange journey. Honestly, I'm still. I was actually just. So I'm still writing it now. It's the book itself is in sort of 2 parts.
Okay.
So there's one part which is the 1,000 vampire listings. So I mean, there's books out there that show you films. You can get your James and Orsini, or Silver and Orsini vampire films, and they're like terrific. And John Edgar Browning and Karen Pickard, and they're great. That give you listings of all the films and all the various media. So I thought, well, we need to say something a bit different. So this is like 1,000 vampires from film and TV, but like it's told just through them. So, for instance, It's the vampires that were like Count Dracula from the horror of Dracula. So the film is written as though it's him. And because there's 1,000, I've got to be careful of word count. It's got to be very concise. But often you get more than one major vampire within a film. So, for instance, for the first Hammer one with Lee and Christopher Lee, you also have vampire. There's say there's 3 major vampires in that. Should be him, Count Dracula himself, his bride that's in the sort of castle, and then you can have the kind of meaner character that gets turned. So then there will be 3 listings within the book under their name, and then they will describe the film, how it involved them.
Okay.
Now, if you read all the 3 listings together, because they kind of have see also, and you go to that one, it actually describes the film.
Okay.
But you're getting the film, so you don't see strangely enough, for a book on vampires, Van Helsing very rarely appears, because he's very rarely a vampire. It's all about the vampires.
Yeah.
So with that listing bit, again, you say, like 1,000 seems like an awful lot.
It does still, though. I still think it does.
And then I think, that I'm going to end up sort of listing 3rd vampire from the right in this film, just to fill it up. But then I kind of, because I'm kind of working my way through, and I'm now on 600. I'm about 600, but I've also got I've actually fully written out 600. And I've got the listing, just the title and the actual vampire themselves, down to 970.
Wow!
And I was thinking, there's so many more, and it's from thinking that because it's also trying to do it that not only is it the well-known film, so very much kind of Anglo-American vampire films, all the really big films, but there's also a whole host of ones from around Europe, from Italy, and
that
Spain,
we never
France,
see over here ever. Yeah.
And then Asia, and you got Japan and China and Hong Kong and the Philippines, and it's like and then Israel and Iraq, and then Australia, and then New Zealand, and then South America. And then suddenly it's like, I'm not going to have room for all these. So it's trying to...
You'll need to do a sequel.
It could. But the interesting part is then trying to get ones that... So people will find ones that they know. There's always going to be the ones that they know, but also ones that they won't know. And hopefully people will think there's lots of more recent ones from other countries that are brilliant. But like you say, we very rarely see. Hopefully it will also be a way to pique people's interest. Think, this sounds quite interesting. I wouldn't mind seeing this. So they'll go and find it.
It's interesting when you talk about the different countries as well, because like just even a few people that I know on Facebook, like I know a few people off the top of my head where that's their jam, is they like, Asian vampire films, or Philippines, or India was another one. So there's a few people that I know, and that's just what they like. And I never really thought of it until I got friends with them on Facebook, and then I see them post stuff all the time. And I'm like, oh yeah, because there's just so much that we don't see. Like, I like to think, I think over in Europe, I think you at least get some stuff that we won't get here, but I find over here we just get, you're American. Yeah.
It's really fascinating the way there's lots of different countries that kind of have sort of lore which is kind of vampiric, and then because of the big sort of Anglo-American Hollywood, or whatever you want to sort of describe it, sort of wave, and I think the kind of globalism caused by online access, streaming, and that has really meant that it's kind of blends things in really peculiar ways. And I think why they kept this bit of their own lore, and then, you know, put on this bit of lore. And sometimes you think, that's amazing. It's like that they come with these really, really bizarre things. But yeah, so that's kind of the one part. And the other part of the book is then I've actually done a series of about 30 or 40 interviews with directors, actors,
cool.
and screenwriters that have been involved in some of these films. And that kind of goes from people like Jim Wynorski, right up to, say, Catherine Hardwicke. So and some actors with like Doug Jones, who's really nice, and Carl Geary from Narja. He's a sweetheart. He's lovely. I mean, some of them they're just so nice. I mean actors who they really have much better things to be doing than spending their time with me. And they were so nice in just answering questions to do with the film, and all vampire related stuff as well, which I'm sure for sort of some of them was really weird. But I don't want to know about any other films you've done. Just tell me about
vampire stuff.
Vampire stuff. I mean, even down to somebody like James Woods. Who he was amazingly gracious with his time. He really was. He doesn't need to be spending that amount of time, and he is so James Woods. Kind of, I'm sitting there thinking, talking to James Woods.
I always think of Family Guy with him. I don't know why, because like they always have him on there, but he plays an evil character. So
yeah, I mean, you can see, but he is so James Woods. And the crazy thing, he's actually writing a vampire film. Would you believe?
Ooh.
But of course, you'll need to get the book to find out more about that.
Yes.
But yeah, so the book itself will be half and half between all these listings, and then the interviews with the actors and placed between them. And I'm also getting Graham Humphreys, who's pretty well known for doing covers for DVDs and things like that. He's on Facebook as well, and he's going to do me some lovely illustrations as well to go along of like that very sort of film postery kind of things of Dracula and characters from various films in it as well. So it's going to be a great book. It's so much more than I first thought.
How do you keep track of all this? Did you plan it all out first and be like you said, you were up to like 970? So did you plan all that out and kind of like an index, or just kind of grew and evolved?
It's kind of, I kind of had an idea, because obviously I had to go to the publisher with an idea. And fortunately, a good friend of mine, Alexandra Helen Nicholas, she's done a book with them before.
Okay.
So and she said, "Oh yes, Simon, you must go. It'd be great. They think it's terrific." So she kind of got me involved with them to talk to them. So I sold them the idea. And then you always get that moment like, oh my goodness, what have I done? I don't know what I'm doing.
What have I committed to?
I know. So I can remember at the start, I thought, well, first thing, let's just get the interviews done, because that's going to be the most involved part. So I kind of wasn't thinking about the other parts so much, and just did that. So I'd actually spent a good 18 months doing that, because knowing how difficult it would be to get
to get a hold of people, and they actually say sure.
Oh, I know. And I've so many emails. So fortunately I managed to have gotten all that sorted, and even then I think the last one only came in about a sort of week back. So because people are busy, you know, they're busy, and suddenly they get a job, they must go off and do it. So so then it was I kind of got that down, although I haven't fully written those up yet. They're all kind of all there sitting there.
But at least you have the material, so that's at least
material's all there. It's all there. It's all sitting there. And then it was sitting actually writing up the listings, and I kind of had, from working out who on earth to phone, I'd actually built up a list of about 400 and so. So, but this was kind of major films and things. So I was fairly confident at that point. Oh yeah, I'll be able to fill that out easy. And then it's like when you start going through, and then you think, oh my goodness, because I kind of worked out how many words on each part needs to sort of take. And so the listings can't be any longer than 150 words long.
Okay.
So otherwise, it'll be this mammoth book, you know,
weighs like 50 pounds.
Exactly. So as I say, variously within the sort of matter of days, it would be. I was thinking, oh, there's no way I'm going to get all this stuff in. So like, I won't be able to fit it all in, and it kept wavering up and down depending what I was doing. So I really don't quite know how it's all going to look until it is done.
Maybe it will come out before Christmas.
I'm hoping. I mean, because this, I mean, fortunately, this is also a non-academic book. So it shouldn't be going through the same systems that academic does quite often, in terms of it has to go out for various external reviews and then come back for revisions and then back out again, and then this production process that can take 12 months. So I kind of have hopes that it should be this year. That's what I hope.
Based on that you're doing this book, even, I have to ask, if you had to pick your top 5 vampire films, what are your favorite films? If you have any.
I know. I mean, there's ones that I can. There's vampire films that I can always watch. There's very rarely one that I go, oh no, I can't now. You know. But it is. I mean, it really is. It's really difficult. It's kind of like we were saying, the next book. It's kind of whichever film is on there, because it's just brilliant. I mean, there'd be things like, I mean, one that I always seem to show here in Poland an awful lot is kind of like Blade 2. And just
really?
Ask my wife how many times I go, quick, it's Blade 2 on.
But so, number 2 though, not number 1?
It's always number 2.
That's weird.
I really like number 2. Very rarely 3, although I've written a lot about 3. And there's lots of it, but with all of them, there's really nice bits. I mean, one that I do love an awful lot is Son of Dracula, and not the awful one starring Ringo Starr, but the one from 1943, and not because of Lon Chaney, who does indeed look very lost in some points of the film, but because of Kay Caldwell in it, and she just out-vamps the vamp. She is the vampire. She is, and for many reasons to do with America being this nation at war, and women should know their place. La da 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 da. But she is just brilliant, and for me, she's kind of like one of the first real female vampires that is like, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to get. There's so much in all of them that you just think, wow, this is amazing. There's great, and ones that have been a real surprise doing this, because I've found a lot of films that I hadn't seen before writing up this 1000 Vampires, and lots of them you can find online. I mean, some of the versions are really badly done and scratchy and what have you, but some of the plots are just amazing, and you just think, wow. And the whole science of vampires, where they kind of make. You can make vampires with this crazy black root of a mandrake or something. I mean, some of these like Mexican ones and Filipino ones and stuff, and they're just like, wow, that's a crazy idea. And they're great, you know. And it's I think because you can get very used to the very Hollywood versions, it's really nice when you get ones from the less seen films.
You get a
from,
different
like,
spin on it than,
that's right, Italy
yeah.
and Spain and even India and that. India, there's a great one with the or I should say India. It's actually Pakistan, Dracula from Pakistan, who has the most feisty vampire bride ever. And it's almost like the Dracula has to have this virtual fist fight with her to actually get hold of the Jonathan Harker character in it. And they're just great, you know. And I'm always curious to help people have that's one of the things of being on online communities, that you can find, particularly in certain communities on there, that people have a very set idea about what vampires are and should be. And actually that view is such a tiny part of the whole genre itself. And it really is. There's so many amazing versions of vampires and vampiric people and things. I really love vampire things that can kind of draw out life from folks and that. But yeah.
And I guess the one thing that I thought of when I heard about your 1,000 vampires on screens, it made me actually think back to Gordon Melton's The Vampire Almanac that just came out. And that they redid. And then I know he's also done all his encyclopedias, but he also has his film reference book as well. Did that influence you at all for this project to like take on, like, or inspire you to take on something this big? Or
I must admit, I had no idea what I did at all. I'm pretty sure it only was because I was speaking to Alex, and she just for this publisher, and she just brought out 1,000 Women in Horror.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that's a brilliant book. It's a great book, terrific. And I was just thinking, well, 1,000 vampires, of course. I really hadn't twigged at all about all the other encyclopedias. I mean, I even own loads of them myself. But I think that's the thing that as I've gone along, and I kind of touched on before, in that there's lots of great books out there that just list vampire films. If you want to know who directed it, who was on sort of camera, and the real basic plot line of it, they will tell you. I mean, some of them, because some of them are quite obscure films, there's not an awful lot of plot going, because there's not an awful lot of plot in all of the films. But so I mean, those are great, and I think this book was thinking it has to be something slightly different to that. And so this is where I thought, well, because I said vampires without necessarily thinking exactly what that might mean, I thought, well, that's it. It's the actual vampires themselves. They are although in lots of them the vampires don't really do a lot, or even say a lot, as we know. Famously, Lee in some of the films probably didn't even speak, and yet they're kind of central. And they must have been thinking something, right? What was that vampire thinking? And you know, and some of them are so close to being in sort of control of the world, getting rid of all humans, or releasing that kind of nerve toxin that will turn everybody into vampire, just for something to sort of go wrong. I was thinking, I mean, how many of those vampires in that film just thought, bugger. I was that close. It was all going so well.
World domination at the fingertips. And then
I know. And it did just make me think. It's really interesting that how you can tell that film, which is very different when you're thinking of it in terms of Van Helsing and the kind of crew of light, all trying to save the world. And actually the real story was the vampire thinking, I'm going to kill everybody. And so I kind of tried to work that with this book. So it's sort of different. And some of them, they they kind of vary a lot. And so in terms of how you can see that the vampire is very active and has a very set idea of what they're doing and why.
Yeah.
As to ones that are kind of just standing there watching what is sort of what is going on around them. And it's really interesting in terms of all the other vampires that have very different ideas of what's going on as well. But if you take those stories together, they actually tell you the film, but not necessarily the film you thought it was when you were rooting for Van Helsing to suddenly thrust up his like sticks, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the idea, to try and do something to make it a bit more interesting, that also then will lead you. I also very much wanted to try and play with that idea, which might not necessarily work that well within a book, but we're so used to stories with links. So you kind of have a link to something else.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to do it that there'll be sort of bits that will say, like a name, and like, so this will tell you, oh, actually, you need to go and read about this person now as well. So unfortunately, it might involve a little bit of flicking back and forward. But
that's okay.
I mean, so I'm thinking, you know, it's a book that you can kind of lose yourself in, following the sort of threads through to tell you a story. And actually, well, this vampire then actually appeared in this film. It's really interesting watching the thread of within the Hammer films. We get sequels of films where the vampire miraculously comes back to life again, and it carries on and on and on. And you can kind of see how this story then feeds into that story, and then into that story over there. So hopefully this will be more like that and have some nice pictures, and you can actually get an
pictures
insight.
Are always good.
We love that. I mean, vampire films, you've got to have.
You need the pictures, right? To go with it.
You've got to. And then you can actually hear some stuff by the people that were sort of in the films as well, and what they.
Which is fun, because you get like inside tips or behind the scenes stories, or you get such unique things that normally you don't hear about. So
absolutely, and I was amazed with with those stories of like horror fans who have always loved horror films. All these actors seem to have loved, horror films and horror-related and vampire-related material since they were kids. You know?
Yeah, which is cool then that they got to actually, be in the films.
Yeah.
So besides, I guess, before we wrap up, what other stuff do you have? I think you have some books coming out this year, you said. You've got some other ones that are coming out soon.
There is a few actually. This year could potentially be quite busy with books. There was the one I do have one here. One that's already out. This one, Transmedia Vampire.
Ooh, yes.
By McFarlane. That has just come out. So that kind of tracks how vampire narrative stories, films have travelled to sort of different media. So from like the book, like let's say with Stoker's Dracula, from the book to the stage to the film, but other stories that have kind of done that with Anne Rice and that. So how it's changed from books to films and other things, and how the original authors try to control what happens as the vampire evolves across things, and how those evolutions in different media change the kind of vampire that we see and engage with.
Okay.
And also very soon is the Anthropocene and the Undead, which sounds very deep and meaningful, and that's out on Lexington Books.
Okay.
And that is that's again, it's a very it's a kind of look at how the kind of current period that we sort of live in, which is always can be put down very much to how mankind has influenced the world around us through like climate, environment, and all that sort of thing, and how that is or can be seen to be reflected on film and within novels, stories, and things. But also, so there's lots of kind of zombie things as well within it. But also quite interesting, it has a kind of an interdisciplinary approach in terms of there are anthropologists and like social scientists and stuff writing about it as well, how the idea of the undead, like these creatures that aren't quite alive and aren't quite dead, actually really influence the way we can interact with folklore from different societies, but also the kind of life forms that grow up around environmental spills, like oil spills and all this fracking and the kind of big ponds you get from that. There's some real kind of undead life forms that grow up around these. And even down to the idea that, and I think that the thing through COVID has really kind of brought that out, how we almost like shamble like zombies at the moment. We really can't decide whether the world will end, will it, or whether it won't end, what we need to do, what we can't do. And there's this kind of like zombie or limbo scene, as they kind of call it, where we kind of just staggering along, not quite knowing what is going on. And I think for lots of us who've been trapped indoors and quarantined and stuff, that really kind of clicks on how we're feeling about life at the kind of like moment as well. I also have one due out, I think probably near the summer, which is a book on toxic cultures in the 21st century, and that's for Peter Lang. And that comes out very much of the kind of recent thing of how the idea of toxic has been used to describe lots of things, in terms of like toxic social media, a toxic environment, work environment, and things like that. And this is more of a kind of like companion idea to just describe how this has been used in lots of different areas of life through through the Black Lives Matter protests, Me Too things, particularly bullying online, and via films and fan groups. So it kind of describes the kind of things that go on, and then even has bits to kind of describe how we might be able to counteract such things and maybe I wouldn't say make the world a much nicer place, but perhaps more just to be more aware about what kind of things are going on and what that might mean to us and the kind of society around us. And I should also mention very soon for the summer as well is Nosferatu in the 21st century, because of course this year is 100 years
anniversary
since the anniversary of F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu being screened. So there's a book on that by Liverpool University Press that should be out, I think during the summer. I think it's put down for, and that will, as well as having people like Gary Rose and Jeffrey Weinstock and Johnny Browning and stuff involved, talking about like the original film. A lot of it is focused on how Murnau's film affects film now. How in the 21st century, the shadow of the vampire still casts its sort of spell over us, and all the various kind of things within music and gaming, film, novels, that the influence of Graf Orlock and all the kind of tropes and ideas from Murnau's film are still very central to things that are happening within the vampire genre.
You have so much going on this year.
There is more. I shall quickly mention one other, which is spoofing the vampire, which is kind of about vampire spoofs. So,
was that the cover I saw that had Leslie Nielsen?
With Leslie Nielsen, the cover is brilliant. I've always wanted a book with Leslie Nielsen on the cover. Has it on the cover? It's brilliant. I love it already. So that's coming out probably towards the end of the year with McFarlane, and so that covers obviously dead and loving it, but it's also vampire films that specifically cite other vampire films, but they kind of spoof, which in itself is one of those odd sort of ideas, in that it's a kind of that affectionate look at earlier films within sort of the genre. So it's not so much there's some out there that are just plain nasty, that really bite in at what's going on and make fun of people that like those kinds of films. Whereas this is more centered on those films that show the love of fans and directors and actors for films that have gone before. And I think, and also with that, some of them don't need to be as blatantly funny as like Dead and Sort of Loving. There's even things with like Only Lovers Left Alive, which there is. You see, Jarmusch, he actually quite likes some vampire films, and there's some very kind of nice digs at the genre. And there's a bit, and with the sort of Tilda, they're kind of almost like a love story of how a vampire would carry on living and stuff.
It was funny when I watched that movie. I didn't really like it the first time. But then when I watched it the second time, I was like, okay, this is good. I get it. And it was better. And I do that sometimes with films.
I think so. I think also with, I guess it's one of those ones again with vampire films that is like, it can be a bit of a marmite thing. And you either love it or hate, but when you start to maybe sort of dig in and see how it's playing with the genre and things, and yeah, I think there's some really nice bits to it. It's a very gentle kind of film in that sense. Yeah. Even though, of course, at the end they are vampires, so they have to then kill some.
They do. Someone's got to die.
You know it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, no, that's cool, and we're almost out of time. But otherwise, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on. This has been great, and you've enlightened me on so many things.
Thank you. No, thank you. There's always new things. So. And there's still a couple that might come out this year, we'll see. But I think the next couple of years it's been quite busy with a lot of vampire related things that I have due out. So you can never have too many books on vampires.
No, you can't. And I have lots. They're just behind me on a library shelf. I do have a lot there, but no, and it's been great, and I've loved chatting about your work, and now at least I know a little bit more about what you do and everything, and how you do so many things, which is really cool, because it just makes me wonder every time I see you do posts on Facebook, and I'm like, I don't know how he fits all this stuff in.
Yeah, I have no idea either. So I think it's one of those things that is kind of like Roadrunner running off of the cliff. Never look down.
Yeah, just keep going.
Keep going. Never look down.
And I'm going to encourage everyone, I'll have a link below here that they can check out your website, where all your books that you have at the moment are listed there, hopefully. So yeah, and then people feel free to buy some if you want, but definitely recommend to check out all the books that are listed there.
Absolutely. And if anyone's interested, apart from the website, I also have a a fake Facebook page, which I try to keep updated with new vampy stuff.
Okay.
And the Facebook page is called Vampires Everywhere.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get the link from you and we'll put that down below
yes.
as well. Yes.
Lovely.
We can put
Brilliant.
all those there.
Well, thank you so much,
Yeah.
and thank you for being up so late as well.
I know I yawned a few times and I was like, I'm sorry.
You were doing very well.
Yeah.
Were doing very
Yes,
well.
it's almost 1 o'clock here. So if anyone's wondering, yeah, it's late. So, but otherwise, thank you for tuning in from home, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed Simon today. And otherwise, tune in next week to Morbid Planet and let us satisfy your morbid curiosity. Stay safe and stay morbid. Bye for now.